The Eatons Catalogue was famous for containing just about everything a home would need. Beds and bedding, lights and light fixtures, tables and chairs. All could be ordered and shipped cash on delivery, with of course the famous guarantee of satisfaction or your money back.
There's a United Grain Grower house that I don't have in my book, but I've come about since near Wolseley near Windthorst in southeastern Saskatchewan, and an elderly single person was living in it at that time, and he'd spent most of his years as a bachelor in the house, and it was equipped completely with Eaton's furniture from one story to another, and all of that original Eaton's furniture still existed there at the time I was there 4 or 5 years ago. It wasn't an Eaton's house, it was United Grain Growers house, and right out of the UGG plan book. I have others like it in my book, but I don't have that particular house. But it was furnished completely with Eaton's furniture that was still there as recently as 2003 or whatever year I was there visiting them. So yeah, you could get the furniture and everything could come from Eaton's. Yeah. They had barns in particular. Of course, everybody needed a barn. I show a couple of barns in the book just to show that they were part of the Eaton's package. But you know, a barn is a barn, and they're much more difficult to peg. They don't have the unique architectural features usually of a house, so it's much more difficult to determine where they were. But near Coronation, Alberta, I have one in the book that's an original 1918 barn, and he has the original blueprints for it. And when I was there about 5 years ago, the original shingles were still on it, and it's the kind of thing you wonder, couldn't that be saved and put in a museum someplace? But they're not that easy or cheap to move, so it may not happen. There were schoolhouses. I have one in the book that may or may not be an Eaton's. It looks like one of the Eaton's ones, but some of the invoice information would suggest otherwise. In the book there were town halls and churches and things like that too in some of the pan books. Not all companies had that. I haven't found too many examples of those around, although they probably do exist, but they did offer a wide range of buildings. There would be other buildings, not only the big barns which were for draft horses at that time, but hog barns and chicken houses and things like that could be had as well.
Four stalls on each side here, 2 horses to a stall, and then Dad, he decided he's going to keep chickens in here. He took all the stalls out and put this all up. Now that was a chicken house for this. And then we were running short of bin room, and this was converted into other 4 stalls converted into a granary. There's a team in here. And the other stuff in over there is mostly cows. Cows and cattle. In those days we had to figure everything was had to be in the barn for the winter. And there's the old Model T Ford back there. The wagon used to be that's you moved all our stuff, all our grain. There was no trucks. Wagon. Here's where your mangers for your cattle, your horses, the mangers. That was all open. That was an alleyway where you throw your feed down from the loft. You throw your feed down from the loft and distribute it all through the barn to your animals. And for the winter, when the winter settled in, this thing was all full of feed. The whole thing was full of feed. And some bedding.
It was a 4 square. And they were a fairly common design. In the main floor there was a dining room and living room separated by pocket doors that you pulled. I don't know if our pocket doors were ever closed, but for family gatherings, of course, you had the two rooms. The tables could be spread out and have huge gatherings in these. And then the kitchen was a big old farm type kitchen, and 90% of the meals were eaten in the kitchen with a kitchen table. And the fourth room was a utility room that was really called a den or an office in the original plans. Many of them were made into bedrooms. In fact, I was at the Pichet house in Duck Lake, and they wondered, why did this bedroom never have a closet? And they had turned it into an office. And I said, because you're using it for the same thing that was originally designed. So our house had this utility room, which we used as the area for washing clothes. The washing machine was in there. Then upstairs were 4 bedrooms and a bathroom and a long hallway. And the third floor, or attic, we had actual stairs. There was no ladder. It was actual stairs up to the attic. And I never experienced it, but my parents talked about the fact that in the 30s, when everybody was hard up, they'd meet at the Henry house, and they'd have square dances on the main floor and round dances on the third floor, and all the kids and clothes were scattered around the 4 bedrooms on the second floor. And in the attic, there was a little area, storage area around the eaves, and it was squared off, and there was little doors so you could run around and chase one another around these eaves. And in there were the Henry archives, including an old satchel that I dug around in one day, and came across this check in 1942 written to Huron Erie for $1,800. And I said, Dad, what was that? He said, that was a check that wrote the mortgage off on this place, and there'll never be another mortgage on this farm. And that's probably why I never ended up farming, because the time I was going to farm, you'd have needed to take a mortgage to expand, and he didn't want that, and I didn't blame him. So I went and did other things and have never regretted it. But it was a very special kind of place. I can remember the kids coming out from town, and they'd go up to the second story where all the bedrooms were, and look down the long hallway and say, my, this looks like a hotel. You know, they thought it was a hotel. Of course, to us, it was just the old house. You know, it was 30-some-odd years old, and we thought it's just an old house. It didn't mean much. The other fond memory I have is we were staunch Anglicans, and whenever the bishop came to town, he got billeted at our house. Of course, Mother had everything all prim propered up and told Les and Father to be on their best behavior and watch your tongue and things like that. But I remember him, and it was Bishop Coleman from the Diocese of Coppell. We were in the Diocese of Coppell, and he came in and sat down in the living room, and he said, my, what a beautiful place. And I thought, what's he talking about? It's just an old house. But since I've been around doing this and wandered into other ones like it, I see what he was talking about. They are really very beautiful places. Yeah. I guess the big thing that struck me is the emotion that and nostalgia. I guess nostalgia is the term that goes along with it. People have such fond memories, and I had such beautiful letters of these fond memories, and some of them I have reproduced in the book. Some of the people are no longer with us, because, you know, if they remembered things being built in 1918, you know, they're not likely with us any longer. But this was 85 when I gathered the information, and it was the nostalgia and the attachment to it, and the fondness. I guess the fondness of the Eaton's name. That it's still a great regret of most people in Western Canada that the Eaton Empire folded, because the Eaton name is still thought of with great reverence, because everything came from the Eaton's catalog. But it's the reverence that people held the house with, and that was the same in our situation. When you're there and it's happening, you don't think much of it, but as the years go by, it means more and more to you. What a honor and a privilege it was to be raised in such a unique house as these particular ones were.